At school, suddenly, the day before there was going to be a school play, the teacher who was directing it came to me and said, Billy Tyler, whoever it was, that was going to play this part tomorrow, suddenly is in bed with the flu, and he can't, and I want you to do it. And he had about 18 lines in one speech only, one long speech. Well, at that point, whatever age it was, I couldn't go home and learn 18 lines, and I'd never set foot in front of people before, and so forth. And I said, well, how am I going to do it? She handed me this piece of paper, and she said, well, that's very simple. She said, you just put on his costume. Well, he was about 6 inches taller than I was, and weighed about 20 pounds more, but I'll get to that. And she said, just learn as many of the lines as you can. As soon as you get stuck, because it was a soliloquy in the middle of the stage, facing, just walk over to the wings. I will be behind the curtain, stage right, and just listen, and I will give you the next line. And then you can go back to this center stage and do it. Well, I was nervous as hell. I put on this cape that was supposed to come down below his knees, you see, this black cape. It was like Marie Antoinette or something. It dragged about 1.5 feet out behind me. I put on the hat, and it came down and pushed my ears right down here, this large, wide, sort of Western-type black hat. I came out, I don't remember the lines, I didn't remember them then. I came out to center stage, butterflies. Well, they started to laugh before I opened my mouth at this outfit, because it was obviously wrong, you see. And I said the first line, and I was halfway through a sentence, and I've dried up. I walked over, I tilted like this, got the lines, walked back to the center of the stage, and well, they were in hysterics. Now, one of two things could have happened. I could have really been embarrassed, ashamed, or whatever. But, having obviously a bit of the ham in me, something inside said, I like this, I like this.
We filmed an interview with Jack Lemmon in his office in Los Angeles, and we stayed in the office the entire time for all that you saw on that film. There was a new director on. He was a very, very good director, but it hadn't occurred to him that that office could have been anywhere in the world. It could have been next door to where we lived, as it were, in London. We didn't need to go to Los Angeles for the office. It would have been nice to have had an exterior shot of the building, or 1 or 2 shots of cars going up and down an American highway. But it was purity television, I can tell you. And it was a wonderful interview. He's great. He knows how to do it, not because he's a cynical person, but because he's an open-hearted person who's done a great deal. He began when he was about 8. He loved being paid attention to, as he said, from then on. And on he went to make some classics. I mean, Some Like It Hot, well, doesn't really get much better. And I particularly like Save the Tiger, Missing, and of course there's The Odd Couple, and some wonderful parts, and able to take on Eugene O'Neill, as well as comedy. His range is enormous. And he was charming, and he couldn't do enough for us. And there was a slight buzz which suggested, or did he tell us, that there'd been a bit of a night before, but that was okay. And at the end he said, hasn't this been great? You know what, it's been great? So he said, it's because we've been talking about me.
Lemmon's professional career began in the 1940s with work in the theatre and with radio soap operas. But it was the arrival of television which gave him the best opportunity to develop his acting. Over 5 or 6 years, he appeared in something like 500 television shows, and all of them went out live.
It had that sense of immediacy and excitement that one gets in the theater. It's like when the curtain gets up, when from the booth they started counting down, 10, 9, 8. A friend of mine that I'd gone to Harvard with was a director, and I'll never forget, and I, to this day, every time a camera rolls, if I don't say it out loud, I mutter it to myself when they say action. He would count down. Now you're getting all steamed up, 10, 9, 8, and so forth. And then he'd go 2, 1, magic time. And whack, the light came up and you were on. And it is magic time if you can make it happen, you know. And so it really gave you experience like the theater, and yet you also got used to cameras suddenly being very, very tight on you at times when you're doing a very emotional thing and this thing is slowly coming in on your face. I've seen so many young actors in film, suddenly when a camera is slowly coming in on them unconsciously, they start playing the scene, they keep backing up practically like this. They're afraid they're going to be run over. And you just have to block all of that out of your mind. So that did, I think, help me for the future when I would suddenly be thrown into film. And my very first film role was there was one of the best pieces of direction that I've ever gotten. As I said, I had just been on Broadway and playing to the balcony. You know, if you make a gesture, very often you would do something like this. Well, you get into film, then your eyeball is 3 feet wide on the screen. A blink can do as much as this, you know, or just a look or whatever, which is a very difficult thing to do, is to learn that less is better very often. Simple, simple. I'm still trying to learn that. But for the first several weeks, and Judy and I, as I said, were getting along famously, and we really worked well together. We enjoyed it, we respected each other, and it was just flying. But every time we'd get through with a take or a print and get it just where we thought it was just sensational, or I did, George would say, "Good, that's wonderful, dear boy, absolutely wonderful. Let's do one more, less. Well, after a couple of weeks of this, all day, I thought if I heard less once more, I was going to scream. And finally, when we were rehearsing this scene, the one I was talking about, and it came around and he was shooting me, and I did, and I mean, we were flying. And I got all through, and I said, that's it, I've never done anything better. He said, "That's perfect." I said, "Thank God." He said, "One more left." I said, "Are you trying to tell me not to act?" And he said, "Oh, God, yes, please, yes." I cannot stand directors who come on a set and know precisely what they want. You know, if they do, they are very smart if they don't tell the actor. In other words, allow the actor to bring ideas. And if an actor's right 1 out of 20, that's a hell of an average, it really is. But it is and can be more than just interpretive, it can be creative. Fortunately, even though it was my first film, I had one idea. And George and Judy both, George Cukor and Judy Holliday, both, well, he brought the house down, thank God. And I don't think I've ever come up with an idea that made me feel, better as an actor than that one, and probably because it was my first film, and it was a good film. He said, "I told you 1 minute." He says, "Okay." He says, "I'm writing a script." He says, "It's about way back there with the St. Valentine's Day massacre, and we got 2 guys who are musicians, and they witnessed the St. Valentine's Day massacre, so they got to join an all-girl orchestra in order to save their lives, and for about 85% of the picture, you're in drag. You want to do it?" Well, I was totally thrown by this, but boy, thank God, a bulb went on, and right there, flat out, I said yes. He said, "You got a deal."
And they were in that dressing room, and Tony Curtis, the Sheik of Araby, the dashing guy, he was absolutely scared. He was standing there with his knees chattering. He didn't have the guts to come out. In front of the camera, there were electricians and personnel there. And Lemmon, the moment he put on ladies' clothes, the voice changed, and he was a woman. And he finally grabbed him by the hand and dragged him out. And he made it happen.
And we worked, Tony and I, for about 3 or 4 days at least, hours a day, on the makeup, with the makeup artist. And individually, Billy gave us our head, and then he would say yes or no. I worked just on lips for a long time, getting this little bee sting thing, because I was making faces and then finding the character to arrive at those expressions. So the exact opposite of the way I normally would work. And that's very legitimate. You can do that at times, especially when you're doing costume parts and parts involving a lot of makeup, etc. I think that Larry Olivier works that way very often, and rather well. When I finally arrived at it, at the right wig and the makeup and the things for the expressions and so forth, about the second week or so, my mother came down to the set to watch us shooting. And we took a picture, grinning, side by side. When the picture was developed, I realized what I had done. I'd created kind of an image of my mother. And I didn't even know it. It was unconscious. But it felt right. I am a method actor, quote unquote, whatever that may mean. I think that
What does it
any
mean for you?
Any actor who prepares, who thinks it all, for heaven's sakes, is a method actor, really. But everybody has their own method or way of working. I find that almost every good actor really is not quite like another actor in his approach to a part. And I, most of the time, work from the inside out, whatever that may mean. In other words, whether it's a comedy or a drama, the only difference in the approach to the part, for me, the actor, is on the level of playing. In other words, I know damn well if I don't take 2 beats before I answer with the next line, it will not be as funny as if I take the beats or if I read it a certain way, but it still has to be legitimate behavior and reading that that character could give, not that he would, but what he could do that might be better. I'll bend a character to behave a certain way if, assuming the director agrees, I think it's more exciting within the scene. I am not interested in getting the truth of how a character really would behave, because I might give the most honest performance anybody ever gave and bore the bejesus out of everybody because it was that honest.
In 1962, Lemmon starred opposite Lee Remick in Days of Wine and Roses, directed by Blake Edwards. This was his first really weighty dramatic lead, a horrifying portrayal of a heavy drinker who descends into chronic alcoholism, dragging his wife down with him. The part was originally performed on television by Cliff Robertson.
I knew the writing was great. I knew everything about it was great from everything I had heard, you see. It was then that I read the script. And a little bit of fear came in. And I thought, my God, I know that Cliff has already done it brilliantly. I wonder if I can get that guy. I wonder if I can get the part. But then I did not want to back off and have to live with the fact that no matter how much I rationalized, I was really finding some excuse not to do it because I was afraid I might not be able to do it well enough, you know. Mm-hmm. And I have, once that was over and I realized that I think I did better work out of that anxiety, I have really, literally used that at times.
When Lemmon teamed up with Walter Matthau, they made one of the cinema's funniest double acts.
Oh, Felix, I'd like you to meet 2 elevator acquaintances of mine. Gwendolyn and Cecily.
No, Cecily and Gwendolyn.
Oh, terribly sorry. Cecily and Gwendolyn. Don't tell me, Robin.
No.
Cardinal?
No, wrong both times. It's Pigeon.
Pigeon. Cecily and Gwendolyn Pigeon. The Pigeon Sisters.
Or as our friends in Chelsea used to call us, the Cuckoo Pigeon Sisters.
I like that.
Thank you.
He was a very shy man on the set. That was because very often Walter was the funny man, and but was so into the character that it was quite obvious to us that he was going to be brilliant in it. He was so unactorish. He was completely the opposite of Walter. But when Walter started Jack, as he sort of gradually came out of himself, it would have us all in fits in the end.
Are you the sort of actor who can turn off when the cameras turn off, or do you carry the character around with you?
Sometimes. Sometimes I can. I think that actors have a basic fear, very often, of losing the character, and unconsciously, if not consciously, they still keep behaving like him when they go home at night or whatever. And of course, you do have to work on whatever's going to be the next day as far as film goes. So you can't lose him also. But there is a fear, I think. If you feel once you have him, you're afraid maybe to let go of him. But you certainly do at times. The only time that it really got a little out of hand was, to jump ahead, when I was doing Save the Tiger. And the man is walking around, and as the picture goes on, he is increasingly reaching a point of a nervous breakdown. He is having one, but I mean where he would really lose control. And as that point approached, I suddenly found myself, driving home from the studio or to the studio or whatever, and I'd start sobbing uncontrollably, and I didn't know why. I'd pull the car over. I couldn't. I'd start to shake, and I would start to cry. And there was no reason. The film was going beautifully. I mean, it was a difficult film, a very emotional film, but I had one great part. And then I realized what it was. The part was beginning to take over a little bit, and that's very dangerous. Any young actor that thinks that it would be ideal if he were to truly become the part, and the part would take over, is out of his cotton-picking mind. Because when the actor loses control, goodbye. There's nothing. That would be like trying to play a drunk scene by getting drunk. Can't be done. Cannot be done. So once I realized what it was, then I was okay. But it scared me at first. I didn't realize the first or second time that it happened. I thought, maybe, what's the matter with me? The most rewarding thing was the younger people's attitudes, because what they saw up on the screen was their father. And over, I would get letters, or they would stop me on a street, young people saying, I saw my father up there. I may not have liked what I saw, but I understand an awful lot that I didn't understand before of the pressures that are on him and what it's like. I don't care how retiring an actor may seem. And peculiarly enough, I've known an awful lot of very good actors, usually fine character actors, that literally seem to, I don't think it applies to me, I don't know, but I don't think so, seem to come to life only when there's somebody else. And they lose all their own guilts. And as I say, usually they're damn good. And they just come to life. Light comes into their eyes and life into their eyes. And then the curtain drops and boom, back they go into their shell and withdraw. And without that release, I think they'd be in a nut house. I basically think that all these games that actors play, this sort of childlike profession,